Good morning. Thank you for joining us if you are watching this live. We've got the lovely Natalie with us today, quite an exciting one. Natalie is a firefighter. I'm going to let her tell you more about that. Before we start, I'm going to ask you if you've got any questions or any comments you want to make. Nothing is a silly question. Please pop it in the comment box and I'll be monitoring that as I ask my questions. This is a really fantastic opportunity for you. So don't feel like that you can't ask a question. Pop it in there and you'll get a response lifetime, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to jump straight in and say thank you so much, Natalie, for joining us today and giving your time so generously. I obviously said you're a firefighter, but can you explain what that role is and what you do day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, hi everyone that's watching. So firefighter, obviously in the name, we deal with fires. So that's the main thing that lots of people think that we do, which we do, but it's actually now the fire and rescue service. So if anyone's trapped somewhere, so for example, if there's a car accident and people need help getting out of the car, then we'll go and help with that. If there's flooding, we go and help with flooding. And obviously fires in buildings or outside of buildings, anything like that. Basically on the fire engine, we say it's just a big toolbox. So we've got water on there, but we've got lots of different tools and things as well. So and we have medical training as well. So if there's kind of an incident and people need help, and some of those tools might come in useful, then we get sent out basically to help. And one of the other things that we do is quite often work with the ambulance service. So if they're trying to gain access to a property because someone might be hurt inside, but they can't open the door because it might be locked, for example. So where we live, there's quite a lot of elderly people that might have fallen over and they might not be able to get to the door. Then we can go and we can help them gain access to the property so they can help people as well. And sometimes a bit of heavy lifting of helping people get out of properties if they can't walk and things like that. So it's a real mix of stuff, and that's the kind of incident side of stuff where there's emergencies that we go and help. But another massive part of our job is prevention work. So a lot of people don't realise that we do this, but obviously, putting out a fire is pretty fun, I'm not going to lie, but we don't want people to get hurt. So we do a lot of work where we try and prevent that from happening. So we try and educate people about fire safety, but also road safety as well. So there's lots of different things and water safety as well. At the moment it's really hot, isn't it? So everyone wants to be jumping in some rivers or in reservoirs and stuff like that. And there's actually lots of kind of safety things with that. We don't want people getting stuck or in difficulty in water. So we do a lot of prevention work, which kind of makes it so we're trying to put ourselves out of a job so we don't have emergencies to go to. But ultimately it's about helping people. So if we can prevent things happening in the first place, then, that's a lot of our work. So in terms of doing stuff like that, we'll do lots of different things. So we'll go into schools and talk to children about different areas of that safety. If you want a home fire safety check, we go and do them. So they're called safe and well visits. So if you aren't sure if your smoke alarms are working properly or you just want a bit of peace of mind, then we'll go to people's homes and we'll check smoke alarms and we'll just ask them a few questions and give them some advice as well. So as a lot of people know, and hopefully at home you've got a smoke alarm in your house, but just testing it once a week to make sure it's working properly is actually really important, because if there was smoke or a fire in your home, then you hear about it straight away and you can get out and you're not getting trapped or anything like that. So little small things that we can do to kind of prevent stuff like that happening, then we do. So so it's a real range of different things really that we do.
It sounds much more varied, I think, than even I considered. It isn't just about responding and putting out the fire when it happens. It's trying to be proactive and preventing it from happening in the first place. Makes sense. Absolutely. And I guess I'm guilty of not checking my fire alarm enough. And when you say there, put it, test it weekly, I'm thinking, well, I'll just weave it into my routine. When I'm doing a deep clean of my bathroom once a week, that's when I'll test the fire alarm and just weave it in. And then it's not an additional task that you have to remember, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really good tip with that is, so I'm quite short, so you can't see this at the moment, but I was the shortest person on my recruits course. But I can't reach the smoke alarm, but I just get a brush and just use the handle and just use that. So even if you're really short, you can easily check it, and you don't have to get a seat and stand on that or anything like that. So that's my top tip for being able to check them. if you're short like me.
Yeah, me too. I can relate to that. So how long have you been doing this job?
So I have just been in about 1.5 years now, so quite new into the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I started last April. I did my recruits course. So that's sort of a 13-week course where you learn all the basics of what you need to do and how to be safe doing it. And it's kind of like when you learn to drive a car, you learn the basics, but it's not until you start driving on your own that you then kind of get more comfortable and you learn other things as you're going along. So yeah, so quite new in the job, but I'm actually 35, so it was a kind of so sort of a midlife change of career in that sense.
35 is not midlife. Don't worry me, I'm on the downside of that. So I've lost the train of thought now. But you said so you've only been doing this quite recently. So this is a common theme that's coming up in these interviews, and it's I think important for us to share this with young people that actually we're kind of conditioned that you need to make a decision very early on what you're going to do for a career. Choose your GCSE options or your qualifications to suit that, stick to that track and don't deviate from it, which some people can do. And some people, have a very clear idea of what it is they want to do at the age of 13. And as I said in an interview yesterday, I was going to be a vet until I realised I was terrified of needles. But I think it's really good to hear from people that actually, even in your mid-30s, you found something that works for you, and it's not too late. There's never too late. So it sounds like you probably went on quite an interesting journey to get there. So can you talk about that for us? Can you describe that journey of perhaps from school? What did you do, and how did those roles or what you did help you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at school, I'm quite a sporty person, so I wanted to be a PE teacher. That's just I think was an obvious thing. And I had a PE teacher who was super enthusiastic, and I thought she was great. So I was like, oh, that would be amazing to do that. So I went off to university and I did sports science. And as part of that degree, I did a module where you do some coaching. So it's all about learning new skills, and skill acquisition is the kind of the academic side of it, but the practical side of it was going and doing some coaching. So I play hockey, so I did some hockey coaching at a local club, and it was like under 13, so a group of people, of young people that want to be there, and it was such hard work, and a lot of kind of, I suppose, just what you do as a kid, like you mess about with your mates and you're having fun, but as someone that was trying to coach, I was like, oh, this is quite hard work actually. I don't think that I want to do this for a job with also, not all young people want to be doing sport. And that's, as a PE teacher, that's what you're doing. You're teaching a lot of people that don't necessarily want to do it. And so that made me realise actually that isn't what I want to do. So I was doing that degree, but I was like, oh, that's not what I want to do at the end of it. And I wasn't really sure. But I did a placement year in the sports development office, and I met the person that was in charge of marketing and communications. And so I finished uni and I stayed in touch with a lot of people. And then I got a job back at the university when I finished. I did a bit of traveling, as a lot of people do, and then went back and worked in the marketing communications side of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. And I did that in sport. So something I was interested in. And then I did like a professional diploma in that as well while I was in that job. So I did that job at the university in different areas, but marketing communications, generally with sport, for like 9 years. And I really enjoyed it. But obviously the university is quite similar to a school year, is that you start term and then you've got exams, and then the kind of the flow of the year is very cyclical. And after 9 years, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not enjoying this as much as I was before, but I didn't hate it. So it was kind of do I want to do something else, or do I just need a change from the university? So I actually did some work experience for lots of different areas. Went part-time, so I was lucky enough that I could afford to do that. So I went part-time, did work experience in a lot of different areas. So I did some work with the Big Issue North. So I did marketing comms for them. So that's very, you're helping people. It feels like it's really worthwhile, but I still was a bit like, I'm just not really enjoying the kind of the work side of it, that marketing and comms side of it. And that kind of made me realise I wanted to do something else that probably wasn't office-based and wasn't that. My friend's dad is a firefighter, so I was talking to him about it, and it sounded quite interesting. So he was like, oh, come down to the station and have a look around. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went down and he showed me around the fire engine. And as you walk around the fire engine, he was talking about all the different jobs that you deal with, which obviously I've just explained before. I was like, oh, that sounds actually, there's loads of different things and you never know kind of what you're going to come across. And, and he said that's what he enjoyed most about the job. And then I tried on some kit and sat in a fire engine and I was like an excited little kid. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, if this was my job every day, like, that'd be amazing. And so, so from then I was like, oh, I think that's what I want to do. And so then I looked into the process of becoming a firefighter. And the way that it works is each county has their own fire and rescue service. So you apply to be a firefighter at a specific county, and they all have kind of obviously different application times, so you can only apply when they need people. So in the bigger places, so down in London or Manchester, like big cities, they're usually every year or a couple of times a year they're recruiting for firefighters because there's more people needed, and there's as people retire, then they need more people going into the post. So I was really lucky that where I live up in North Yorkshire, they were open applications. So I applied there and I applied for West Yorkshire as well. And the process of that was you basically fill out an application form online and then you do a series of online tests. So the first ones are like situational awareness ones. So what you do in certain situations, and it's like multiple choice. So you get a list of answers. And based on that, it obviously gives them an indication of the kind of person you are and how you would deal with different situations. And so once you get through that, then you have to do some maths, English, and mechanical reasoning online tests. So there's loads of these that you can practice online, and they have practice ones on their website, so you know what to expect. But they're all timed as well. So it's kind of working under pressure and dealing with trying to find out the information that you need to answer the questions. So you had to go through them. So that's quite daunting because you've got like a time in the top corner and you're trying to do the work, but then you've only got 3 minutes left. So quite a stressful situation. But obviously the job itself is you're dealing with situations where you have to work under pressure. So it's kind of an easy way for them to get to people that can do that online very well. So they took a certain percentage of those people then through to the next stage, which was the practical test. So all of that was done over a couple of months online. And then I got invited to go and do practical tests. So obviously as a firefighter, you need to have a certain like cardiovascular ability, so being able to run a certain amount. So you do the bleep test, which some people might have heard of or might have done. I remember doing it at school. I'm sure you do too, Pip. So it's kind of running shuttles basically, and it gets quicker as you go along, and you have to get to a certain level on that. So you have to get to 8.9 on the bleep test, and then you had to do practical things. So you had to be able to lift 25 kilograms, so from your waist and then above your head. So that simulates being able to lift a ladder back onto a fire engine. And then you had to climb up a ladder and do what we call a leg lock. So you can take your hands off, but you're safe on the ladder. And so that's just to check that you are not scared of heights and that you can work at height, because obviously sometimes we have to do that. And you had to do, it's called a casualty drag. So if we are taking someone out of a building, for example, if we need to, you get someone under the arms and then you walk backwards with them. So we had to do that, and you had to do it in a certain amount of time. And then you had to do a test on, so you wore one of the masks that we wear. So they're called BA masks, so breathing apparatus masks. So you had to wear one of those, and you had to crawl through a space, and it was basically dark, and then you had to crawl back the same way. So it was kind of like a little maze sort of thing. But there's only one way, so you couldn't get lost. And then they closed the door, so it was completely pitch black. And that was just to check that you weren't scared of small spaces and being in the dark, because, again, we do a lot of work if you're in a smoky room, you can't see much. So you had to do all of these tests and pass all of those. And that was like the practical side of it. And so when we got to there was about 300 people, I think, went from those tests. So over 3,000 people applied, and then it went down to, they kind of whittled it down after the online tests and then the practical tests. So there's about 300 people, I think, got to practical tests. So it is quite hard to get to that point, because that's a lot of people that obviously haven't got through to that last stage. And then after the practical test, then I had an interview. And at that time it was COVID, so I couldn't do it in person, so I did it online. So there was a presentation to do, and then some interview questions. And a lot of those were based on the kind of attributes towards being a firefighter. So a lot of those are kind of teamwork, dealing with a challenge, working with different, like, diverse people, lots of different questions around that. So I had the interview, and I thought it had gone quite well. And I was happy, because I was like, I think I've done my best. So if I don't get it, there's someone better. But then was lucky enough to be offered a place. And then I started my course in April last year. So all of that process, I started June the year before. So it's a long process to get in, because there's a lot of people apply. So it just takes a long time. So it's a long process, but that's the kind of the process you go through. And in terms of qualifications you need and stuff like that, you needed GCSEs. So it's A to C, which I think now is 6 in GCSE in maths and English. So your qualifications you need. You don't need to go to university or anything like that. That's just the kind of the route, obviously my route that I took, because I wanted to be a PE teacher to start with. And here I am now.
So is it just the English and maths you need then to apply, or do you need it's just the English and maths? I know when I did a bit of research down our way, down south, they considered the functional skills qualifications instead of GCSEs as well, which is really handy, especially for home ed learners, to know that, because the cost difference and everything else, logistically, it's a lot easier for a lot of families to get the functional skills than the GCSEs. So that's really, really good to know that, actually, because I guess you're going through the assessments in the application process. The GCSEs or whatever kind of become irrelevant. It's about physical fitness and how you're going to cope in these sort of scenarios, which a GCSE in history doesn't help you with.
Absolutely. And so you just need a bit of knowledge there. So when we're working with, if we're using water for certain things, like there's a certain amount of water that we have on the fire engine, and there's a certain amount of water that we can use per minute, depending on different hoses that we use and stuff like that. So there's a bit of maths there, like practically, but that's very specific to the job. So once you're in the job, you learn that and you can understand that, and it's it's handy if you can do those calculations in your head. But a lot of the maths tests that we probably did to get in, I've probably not necessarily used that, or I've not realised that I've used that now. But I suppose it's their way of being able to kind of cut down from thousands of people to a smaller number. But the other way that people get in as well is, so I'm a whole-time firefighter, so that's my full-time job, but a lot of people do on-call as well. So that's an on-call firefighter, you do it alongside your other job. So you have to be on call for a certain number of hours a week, and as I say, you might have a full-time job in an office, for example, but then you might do that alongside it, and a lot of people do that and then end up getting a full-time job from applying through that. So you still have to do like a maths and English test with that as well, but it's not online. It's you go into the station and you do it in the station, and with that, usually on-call firefighters, it's harder to recruit them, because obviously you need to be within you need to be close to the station at your work or at your home, and so it's a bit harder. So sometimes there's more opportunity to become an on-call firefighter, because that's usually a constant thing that people are applying, applications are open for. So that's sometimes a good way in for people to have a go at the job and see what it's like as well, before going for a whole-time kind of role, if there aren't any available at that time as well.
Yeah, a bit like with the police force, you can have special officers that are effectively volunteering, and then they might use that experience to help them with the application process.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing, really.
And I don't know if this is happening everywhere, but I know recently in the southeast they're starting to trial pilot schemes in my local area for cadets for the fire service as well. So they're recruiting like 13 to 17-year-olds to come and do these courses and to learn more about it. And I guess if that is an opportunity for someone who's of that age range, so they're not at an age where they can apply for the fire service yet, but that's an interest of them, that would be a good way as well of gaining an insight and experience if that's available.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do that at my station actually. So we've just had a course finished, and then they're going to start some new ones in hopefully September, October time. And yeah, that is a great way, like you say, to just get experience and see what it's like. It's it's something that you can try, and if you like it, then actually, yeah, I think this is what I want to do, and then you can obviously work towards and find out what you need to do then to get into the kind of it to become like your full-time job. So that's a really good way to do it as well. And I'd say, a lot of what we do is about helping people and about being part of our community. So, any volunteering that you do or any groups that you are part of. So like, being part of the Scouts and stuff like that and helping in the community through that, like all that is really good experience for, for interviews, and also just working with a real mix of people, which is for the job itself is what you're going to be doing, because you work with everyone in the community. So any stuff that you can do like that, as a young person now, is totally going to be beneficial for if that's what you wanted to do kind of long term, for sure.
Yeah, cool. So what would you say is the best part of your job?
There's quite a lot of best parts of the job, I think. Like driving around in a fire engine is pretty fun. But I think, like, for me, the rewarding side of it is you're helping people. So everything that you're doing during the day, like you're doing to help, keep people safe. And, we do a lot of stuff. Like we have a dementia friendly breakfast club, like once a month at our fire station. So, that's where we just talk to people in the community. They come in for a cup of tea and some breakfast. And so we do a lot of stuff like that that I really enjoy and I find really rewarding in terms of the job. So I love doing that. I love the response side of it as well, because again, it's, you never know what you're going to turn up to. So it's a lot of problem solving. You're working as a team. There's always at least 4 of you on the crew, sometimes 5, but you're working as a team to kind of solve something and to help people. So I enjoy that kind of that thought process and that practical application of your skills as well. And it is a very practical job. There is a bit of admin-y stuff where you're organising some of the prevention work, so you're organising some school talks and things like that, but generally you're out and about or you're training practically. So I like that part of the job, because it's not just kind of sat behind a computer all day, which is what I was doing in my last job. And so I enjoy the kind of being out and about and talking to people.
Yeah. And I think again, it's a common theme for anyone working in the sort of service industry where you're helping people. There's so much job satisfaction from that, as opposed to making money for someone. And it's you can't really describe that without experiencing it. But yeah, public service, obviously, huge amount of job satisfaction there. I think helping people.
For sure.
So, what would be the worst thing about your job?
So the worst bit probably is, obviously, we're going to help people, and sometimes people can be in quite bad situations and quite hurt. So that's definitely the worst part, because it's not nice when someone's really hurt, but ultimately we're there to help them as much as we can. So although you might see some people that are not great, you're doing your best to help them. So that's definitely the worst bit for sure, but at least I know that I'm doing my best to help them in that whatever situation they're in.
That's it, yeah. I did have a learner send in a question in advance. Grace has asked, I'm guessing you can't be too specific, but Grace has asked, what's the biggest fire you've been involved in?
That's a good question. I get that question a lot, actually. So the biggest fire I went to was a factory on fire. So it was a factory that made like concrete slabs for your garden sort of thing, and they had big ovens that they obviously baked the concrete into the shapes that it needed to be in. So it was a big factory, and there was loads of smoke coming out. So we went in and there was a fire. So there's like a mezzanine level in it. So we had to go up and put out some of that fire. But because it was big, like wooden slats, so it kept reigniting. So there was a few teams that had to go in, and I got to go in twice. And then eventually we found like the main source of the fire, and me and my teammate got to put it out. So that was super exciting, because I'd also only been in the job for kind of a couple of months. So it was like the first big proper fire that I'd been to. So probably that. But then the other night we went to a fire in a field. So obviously at the moment it's really dry, isn't it? And all the farmers are have got loads of crops in the field. So a fire had started in the field, and because it was a bit windy, it just obviously sweeps through a really dry corn really quickly. So that was really big, but it wasn't necessarily inside. So it was a bit easier to deal with in that sense, but you just need a lot of water, basically.
Yeah. We've had a question come in. I don't know if you can see it. Our social media squirrel, otherwise known as Joe, has asked, how do you enjoy working with her husband, Craig?
I enjoy working with Craig, actually. Yeah, he got me involved in this, so I can speak to you guys. But yeah, Craig, obviously he came up from Kent, so he likes to tell us lots of stories about his time in Kent as well. So we take the mick out of him a bit for that. But yeah, no, Craig's great and he's super helpful. So he's got a lot of knowledge, so he's taught me lots of stuff. But don't tell him that's too nice.
There's no north-south competitiveness then.
I think there is a bit between different counties, because there's general guidance for the country and how to deal with different things, but everyone does it a bit differently depending. So down in Kent it's a lot more built up, whereas up here it's a lot more rural. So the things we deal with are slightly different to what you deal with in a built up city. So I think there's a bit of rivalry, but obviously Craig's come to join us, so it must be better up north.
Shame. So I was going to ask, what was the biggest challenge you've personally had to overcome in order to get to the point you are now? You've described a really complex application process. So it could include that, or just generally in the build up to applying to be a firefighter. What's the biggest challenge you personally overcome?
I think it was that kind of fear of like, I'm in a job that I don't hate, but I'm not absolutely loving it. I'm at that point where, do I try and change careers now, but I might not like it, and then what am I going to do? And also, like, I don't want to get, especially to become a firefighter, I don't want to be like too old and try and do it when I'm too old, because I might not be as like strong or fit as I am now. So it was probably just the fear of like taking that leap to be like, actually, no, I'm going to go for it and I'm going to do it. And obviously it's paid off for me, but a lot of people, so some people on our course had applied 9 times to different areas to try and get in, because it's super competitive. So I feel really kind of, I suppose, lucky that I got in first time, but I did work quite hard to do as much as I could to get in. But yeah, probably the biggest challenge was that. And once I started, the 13 weeks of training it's intense. You know, you're there at training centre, so you stay over during the week. So you have your weekends, you go home, but you're there during the week. So you're there kind of 24 hours a day, and there's lots to learn. So it is quite a challenging time, because you get tired because you're physically doing lots of practical stuff all day as well. And it's really hot when you're wearing all your kit all day. So that's challenging, but I was enjoying it as well. And that I was kind of like, yeah, I've definitely made the right decision here, because I'm absolutely loving doing this, although I'm quite tired. But it is a challenge just to keep that enthusiasm up for 13 weeks. You know, it's quite a long time. But yeah, I think it was just that fear of, do I want to make a big career change? Will it be okay? Will I like it? But I kind of was like, well, if I don't do it now, I probably will never do it. And if I don't, then I could regret it. And knowing what I know now, obviously I absolutely love my job and I'm so glad that I've done it. But at the time, it's just a bit daunting, isn't it? Because you're like, oh, what shall I do? But yeah, I was trying to think like, well, what's the worst going to happen? If I don't like it, I'll find I'll do something else, or I'll go back to what I was doing before. So it's worth the risk, I think. But it's just a bit of a daunting time when you're doing that, when it's a big change in your life.
I think change can be daunting and overwhelming, but we talk in our courses, our level 2 courses in particular, there's a whole section on the relationship between risk and reward. And sometimes you've got to take a risk to get the bigger reward. So, and that's a prime example. And again, people I'm speaking to who are now in jobs that they're so passionate about, the vast majority of them that wasn't part of the original plan, and they had to take a step and take that jump in order to get to where they want to be, and none of them regret it. So it's something to be mindful of. I think that sometimes you can stay safe where you are, but actually, are you going to be happier elsewhere, and are you going to regret not having taken that step later on down the line? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think definitely with me as well, there's so much stuff that you wouldn't think it, but from my old job, things that I've learned that are really helpful in this job as well. So even though that was office based and stuff, like there's loads of things that I've taken from that are totally beneficial to what I'm doing now. So I think wherever you end up and whatever you do, that journey, you definitely learn different skills and you meet different people and you take things from different people in the way that they work that will help you with wherever you end up, for sure. So it's beneficial, I think, sometimes to have a bit of that experience in doing a few different things, because you learn a lot from it.
And I guess that's really good advice for someone who is at the application process and doesn't necessarily get in the first time and has to do other jobs. You could be taking or learning from these other jobs, and that might help you in the application process next time, or it might just help you once you succeed and you're in your job. And I know, like myself included, I didn't start in teaching. I did all these other things. I worked in NHS, police first, and then worked as a teacher. And I remember thinking, oh, I've wasted all that time. But when I look back, it was actually, no, I learned that there, and that helped me be a better teacher because. And so, I think everything happens for a reason. And if you want it bad enough, especially as it is so competitive in the fire service, like you say, that person had applied 9 times, but they didn't give up, and in the meantime, they're developing other skills to help them further on down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, through the application process, you learn every time as well, because you've done it, so you know what to experience the next time. And I think, with the fire service, it's worth, you can apply to a few different places, and it might mean that you get in, you could get in somewhere that you might not necessarily think you want to live for the rest of your life, but it's just a step to then being able to transfer back to where you currently are. And, a lot of people do that because you can't always get into the place that you want to get into first time. So, it's definitely, it's applying to lots of different places, you get that experience, and you can move later down the line, and you never know what might happen. You might move somewhere new and be like, actually, this is amazing. So,
So if you weren't a firefighter now, obviously you said you originally wanted to be a PE teacher, then you worked in marketing. Was there another dream job anywhere that
well, when I was really little, I wanted to be an archaeologist, but I think that's just because I read horrible history books and I was like, that'd be a fun job. And on Jurassic Park, on the first one, when they're digging up a dinosaur bones, I wanted to do that. I think now, if I was going to do something else, the other thing that I'm really passionate about is just traveling, seeing lots of different places. So I think something that would allow me to do that, so maybe like a travel photographer or something like that, would be pretty cool, because you get to go to some amazing places and you'll have some really good photos of it afterwards. So probably something like that.
I think the common theme with both those jobs is that you're not sat in an office, you're out and about doing it.
No, for sure.
Can't see you doing that again. So what advice would you give any young person who's considering this as a career option for themselves? You've given us loads, but is there any other tips that you could give?
So I'd say have a look at your local fire stations and pop in or get in touch with them, because I'm sure that they'll, you can go in, you can have a look around the fire engine, you can talk to them about the job as well. And it's good to see it more and see it in person and ask them those questions. And obviously you can find out how things work there, because there's different shift systems everywhere and stuff like that. So definitely do that. A lot of fire stations have open days as well, so go along to one of those. And then I think, if it's something that you want to do, you know what it entails, the practical skills side of it, you get taught that. So it's all about the, working in your community and helping people. So anything you can do where you're doing a current job that does that, or you can volunteer some time to help do that, that's going to help you, in your interview, and just give you some good experience towards it. So I think definitely do that. And then, as we said, it is quite competitive. So I think if it's what you want to do, don't be disheartened if you don't get to do it first time, just keep going and apply to different places. So even if you get in somewhere else, you could transfer back if you need to or want to later down the line, or just going through that application process is all good experience. So it'll make you even better when you're applying the next time around. So just don't give up on it, I suppose.
Sounds Sound advice. I'm just going to give one last opportunity in case anyone who's watching wants to ask any more questions, because there's always a slight delay. I think there's about a minute gap. So just going to ask one more time. If you've got a question, throw it onto the comment box now. Is there a way, if people are watching this retrospectively and they have questions, can we reach out to you still, Natalie?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you my email address. Well, you've already got my email address, so you can share that with people if they've got specific questions. Then they can just drop me an email and ask those. More than happy to.
Lovely. And that's really kind of you, generous with your time. One question I was going to ask is, what's the shift system like?
So it's different at different stations. So some stations you work 4 days on, then you have 4 days off. So that's usually 2 days and then 2 nights, and then you have 4 days off. And that's just what happens forever until you have some leave or whatever. But a lot of people now are going self-roster as well. So we're on a self-roster station, and the way that it works for us is it's a lot more flexible. So we actually get to pick what days we work. So we have a rota for 56 days, and we have to put down 28 of those days that we will be happy to work. So we have to do 6 weekend days. So that could be just a Saturday, just a Sunday, or you could do a whole weekend and have the next weekend off. Because otherwise everyone might want to have weekends off and there'll be no one there. So it's a bit more flexible, so you can kind of pick your days. So we are on station during the day, 8 till 6, and then we're on call the night before. So we have a little alerter. So I can run to the station in about a minute and a half from my house. So if my alert goes off in the night, then I run to the station, but we don't sleep at the station. Whereas if you're on 2 days, 2 nights, you'll sleep at the station during the night while you're on your night shift. But yeah, so it's a bit of a mix, and it depends on the county and it depends on the fire station. So there's a mix just in our county. So yeah, it's worth just thinking about that. But ultimately, usually when you get in, you maybe get to put down some preferences, but you'll kind of be put where they need you, and you might get to move around later afterwards. So, but we do get quite a lot of time off, which is good for the work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Jo has put another comment. She's put, amazing, so insightful. Thanks for giving your time. It's great to see a woman excelling in a field dominated by men. If anyone who's following the events today, so we've got the obviously event happening all week. Today is really focused on women working in different fields. So there was a little video on STEM careers, so science, technology, engineering, maths, and we've got an interview later with my sister, actually, who's an ex-police officer but still works within Kent Police. So yeah, was there anything you wanted to add about that? Have you found it harder being a woman in the fire service? I mean, not that you can compare it with being a man in the fire service, but or anything else, or anyone else. Are you I'm guessing you're in a minority, I'm assuming, but am I wrong?
No, you're right. I am in a minority. So they do a lot of work to proactively try and encourage more women to get involved and get into the fire service. So on my course, there were 16 of us and 5 were women. So that was higher, I think, than it has been previously. Yeah. On my station, there's one of a woman that I work with. So there's just 2 of us, and there's 12 of us on station. And that's not including the on-call lot. So there's another sort of, I think, 8 or so of those. So there's 2 women out of that many men. But I've not found it difficult, and I quite enjoy being a woman in the fire service, because I think it is good to be represented. And I think when we go and do school talks, it's good when I'm there or my colleague Emma's there, because young people see that you can be a woman and do it as well. Because it is, obviously, everyone just assumes that it's quite a male-dominated job. So but there are women in the service. It's just you are in a minority. But I've never found that to be a detriment to me. So all the people that I've worked with just assume that I can do the job the same as those. And if I need help, I'll ask. So, obviously some of them are taller. So if we're doing something where you need to reach up, I'm quite short for a woman anyway, so they will be the people. I'll get them to do that. And if we're crawling through a small space, I'll do that. And I think in the fire service, you're a team. So there's 4 of you dealing with the situation, and everyone has different skills in different areas. And so you work to those skills. And sometimes, because I'm a woman, I have different skills that are better than some of the guys, and vice versa. So it's good to have that mix, I think. And I've not found it to be a detriment, and I quite like being a woman, so that just to represent really in that sense. So I've not found it to be a challenge so far at all. So see what happens as it goes through my career, but at the moment it's good. I like it.
It sounds like those stereotypes are being broken down, which is great. We needed it for a long time. And I think, you've described how practically it makes sense to have a mixture of people with different skills and abilities. But I think any public service, you need a fair representation of all of society, because you're serving all of society. So it just makes sense. So it's shocking that, a third of the people that were on the training course were women, and that's the highest it's been, because it should be half and half, really, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do, a lot of different fire services will do like specific days. So if you are a woman, you can go to a specific day and you can try the practical tests, and they will do. So West Yorkshire, I know, put like fitness sessions on. So because obviously inherently women are not always as strong as men, or they might not have done strength training before, and that's changing a lot now. But previously, so women would fail on the strength side of the practical tests. So they've put on sessions to help women with getting stronger and knowing what they need to do to pass those tests, so that that's not a barrier to them getting in. So there are things that people are being proactive with to try and do, but there's still a way to go, and that's probably a bit of perception as well as working out what all those barriers potentially are. But it's good that people are doing it, but I think it will just take time for that to happen. It doesn't change overnight, does it?
No, but it's moving in the right direction, and that's the main thing. Cool. Well, I thank you so much, Natalie. It's been really interesting speaking to you. And I had no idea that you were so new into the service as well. So you've got most up-to-date knowledge on the process as well, which is really handy. And thank you for as well. Like Natalie said, I've got her email. So if anyone's got any questions and they're watching it back, I know people are busy with other lessons and stuff at the moment, so they'll probably be watching this later in the day. If you've got any questions, feel free to send them to me, and I can send them on to Natalie as well. So I will leave it there. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Natalie. See you later.
No worries. Bye.